How's it going, everybody? It's Liquor here, and welcome to the ultimate $300 knife buying guide for CS2. In this video, I'm going to be talking about every single knife in CS2 and showing you the best options that are available for $300 or less. Before we jump straight into it, let me give you guys a little bit of information about how this video is going to work. So I'm going to be displaying my prices in USD and getting them from the following markets: Buff, CS Float, D Market, Bitskins, Skinport, and finally Skin Baron. When I'm showing you examples of the knives in game, I'm going to be most likely referencing buff prices, but I'll be displaying all of the other market prices at the same time. And with all of that out of the way, let's jump straight into it. So off the bat, we're going to have to eliminate some of the higher tier knives in the game, as there is no market where you can pick any of these knives up for under $300. This includes the Butterfly Knife, the M9 Bayonet, and the Karambit. So let's begin with the lower tier knives, and then we'll work our way up, kicking it off with the Shadow Daggers, the Navaja, and the Gut Knife. Now, despite these knives not being many people's favorites, I think they're an incredible option for a $300 budget. That reason being, there is not a single finish on any one of these three knives that you cannot afford with $300. That means you can get fades, marble fades, slaughters, dopplers, gamma dopplers, case hardens with significant blue, or even good condition crimson webs, all for under $300. So if you're somebody that would rather have a high tier finish on a low tier knife, then these are going to be perfect for you. Let me give you some examples of the amazing looking knives in this category that you can pick up, starting off with the fades. The Shadow Daggers Fade are going to run you about $245 minimum on buff. Because of the extra $50 you get to play with, you're going to be able to pick up a very high percentage fade. For an example, this pair of Fade Shadow Daggers have a 95.9% fade and only cost an extra $15, bringing the total cost of these daggers to $260.10. For the Navaja knife, the base price is even cheaper, coming to only $215.80 on buff. As you can see, on nearly every other third-party marketplace, the price still comes under $300. This again allows us to pick up a really high percentage fade. What you're seeing here is a 98.8% fade, which is currently selling for $233.03 on buff. And here we have the Gut Knife. The Gut Knife comes in to a minimum price of $220.98 on buff. What you're seeing here is a 98.5% fade for the price of $259.07. Moving on from the fades, we're going to another fan favorite, this being the Doppler family. Dopplers and Gamma Dopplers received a massive visual boost with the release of CS2, and the fact that you're able to pick up some of the best looking knives in the game for under $300 is just incredible. I'm going to kind of let the footage roll here, and you guys can pause and take a second if you need to, but I'm going to quickly show off all the Doppler phases and the prices in game. What you just saw were the Phase 1 Shadow Daggers, here are the Phase 2. Here are the Phase 3, and then here are the Phase 4. And here we have the Navaja Doppler phases. Again, I'm just going to let the footage roll and you guys can pause if you need to. This is the Phase 1. This here is the Phase 2. This here is the Phase 3. And then this here is the Phase 4. And then lastly for the Dopplers, we have the Gut Knives. Again, I'm going to let it roll. Starting it off with the Phase 1. Now on to the Phase 2. Now on to the Phase 3. And finally on to the Phase 4. Next up we have the Gamma Dopplers. And once again, I'm going to let the clips roll and you can pause if you need to. These are the Phase 1. And these are the Phase 2. Here we have the Phase 3. And here we have the Phase 4. Same again for the Gut Knife. Here we have the Phase 1. The Phase 2. This is the Phase 3. And lastly, this is the Phase 4. Another super iconic finish is the Crimson Web, and you can pick up any of these 3 knives in minimal wear condition for the following prices. So by now you probably get the idea, but I want to reiterate it one more time. There is not a single finish you cannot afford on any of these 3 knives. I highly recommend that you don't brush past these knives merely because they're not high tear and loved by everyone. I think having the freedom to get any finish you want is a very important thing to remember. I'm going to take a second to step back just to show you some of my other favorite options for these 3 knives, but I'll be back in a minute with our next knife. Here we have the Navaja Marble Fade in factory new condition. This is the Navaja Case Hardened and factory new. This is the factory new Navaja Tiger Tooth. And this is the factory new Navaja Slaughter. Here we have the factory new Gut Knife Law. This is the minimal wear Gut Knife Autotronic. This is the factory new Gut Knife Marble Fade. This is the factory new Gut Knife Slaughter. These are the factory new Ultraviolet Shadow Daggers. This is the factory new Shadow Daggers Tiger Tooth. This is the factory new Shadow Daggers Marble Fade. And these are the Shadow Daggers Law in minimal wear. That is going to bring an end to our first section. With the Gut Knife, the Navaja Knife, and the Shadow Daggers out of the way, let's get into our next set of knives. This set of knives includes the Survival Knife and the Paracord. The Survival Knife and the Paracord are both very cheap knives inside of the game. The only finish that we're not going to be able to afford on either of these knives is Fade, but there are still many high tier finishes that we can get for $300, and I'm going to show you some examples now. Here we have the Paracord Slaughter in minimal wear condition and the Survival Knife Slaughter in factory new condition. Here we have Case Hardened for the Paracord and the Survival Knife. You're able to pick up both of these knives in minimal wear condition. And for our last high tier finish, we have the Crimson Web. You're able to pick up the Paracord Crimson Web in field tested condition and the Survival Knife Crimson Web in minimal wear condition. So that's going to be it for the high tier finishes, and now I'm going to show you some of my favorite options for low tier finishes that come in at much cheaper prices. Now I'm just going to let the footage roll and show you guys some of my favorite options that you can pick up as well. Starting it off, we've got the Boreal Forest, both of them in minimal wear condition. Following that, we have the vanilla or the unpainted knives. After that, we have the blue steels, both of these are in factory new condition. And lastly, we have Night Stripe, both of these are in minimal wear condition. If there's a finish that you like that I didn't just show in that section, that's okay, because remember, as long as it's not the Fade, you're going to be able to afford it with a budget of $300. So whether you like the Urban Mast or the Scorched, it doesn't matter, you're going to be able to afford it. So with all of that out of the way, now we're going to eliminate the Survival Knife and the Paracord Knife. And now we're moving on to the Nomad. Once again for the Nomad, we can't afford the Fade, but we also can't afford the Vanilla or the Slaughter. But that doesn't mean that we still can't get some really nice looking finishes. Here are some of my favorites. First up, we got the factory new Forest DD pack coming in at $255 on Buff. Of course, we're going to throw in the Case Hardened. This Case Hardened is in well-worn condition and will run you a minimum of $213. For the blue steel, we've gone for the minimal wear condition for $260. Another nice looking finish is the Night Stripe. This is in minimal wear condition for a minimum of $165. And lastly, we've got the Crimson Web in battle scarred condition for a minimum of $222. And that is going to wrap up the Nomad Knife. And now we're on to the Ursus. As with the last few knives, there are only going to be a few finishes that we can't afford. These finishes are as follows: marble fades, and Dopplers. But this still leaves us with some very nice finishes that we can pick up within our budget. Here are some of my favorites. So first up, we got the Tiger Tooth in factory new condition. The cheapest you'll find this is $267 on Buff. Next up, we got the Vanilla. This is a cheaper one, coming in at $213 on Buff. Here we've got the Ultraviolet, another super clean skin. This one is in minimal wear condition, gonna run you $183 on Buff. For the Crimson Web, we've got it in field tested condition for $216. And for the Case Hardened, you can pick this up in minimal wear condition for $192. And lastly, we've got the Slaughter in minimal wear condition, coming in at $260 on Buff. And that's going to be it for the Ursus knife. And now we're on to the Bowie knife. Once again, we only have a few finishes that we can't afford. That is going to be the Fade, Dopplers, and Gamma Dopplers. Because the Bowie has been out for such a long time and is still considered one of the lower tier knives in the game, we're able to buy some really nice finishes for under $300. So if you're a fan of the Bowie, then there is a lot of potential for a really nice looking knife. Here are some of my favorites. First up, we got the Law in minimal wear condition and the Marble Fade in factory new condition. Next up, we got the Autotronic in minimal wear condition and the Tiger Tooth in factory new condition. This is the Bowie Knife Slaughter, which you can pick up in minimal wear condition, and the Freehand, which you can pick up in factory new condition. And finally, we have the Ultraviolet in factory new condition and the Case Hardened in minimal wear condition. So that is going to be it for the Bowie knife, and now we're on to the Huntsman Knife. The Huntsman Knife is another overhated knife in my opinion. I think it has really nice animations and lots of very nice finishes. Some finishes that we're unable to afford are as follows: marble fades, gamma dopplers, and fades. But here are some of my favorite finishes that we can afford. So first of all, we have the vanilla and then the black laminate in factory new condition. Next up, we got the Law in minimal wear condition and the Tiger Tooth in factory new condition. Here we've got the Case Hardened and the Autotronic, both in minimal wear condition. For the Crimson Web, we've got it in field tested, and for the Brightwater, we've got it in factory new. And then lastly, we've got the Ultraviolet in minimal wear condition and the Slaughter in field tested. And that is going to bring it in to the Huntsman Knife, and now we're going straight into the Classic Knife. The Classic Knife is like some of the knives we touched on earlier, meaning the only finish that we can't afford is the Fade. But this still leaves us with many good looking finishes. Here are some of my favorites. First up, we have the Crimson Web in field tested condition, and then the Slaughter also in field tested condition. Next up, we have the Case Hardened in minimal wear condition, and then the Vanilla. And then lastly, we have the Forest DD-Pat in minimal wear, and then the Blue Steel also in minimal wear. So that's it for the Classic Knife, and now we're moving on to our next knife. That knife being the Stiletto. The Stiletto knife has been growing in popularity over the years and very steadily increasing its price. I hold this knife very dear to my heart as a Stiletto Urban Masked is the first knife that I ever unboxed, so I'm always going to love the Stiletto. As I just mentioned, because the Stiletto is expensive, there's of course going to be some finishes that we can't afford. And these finishes are marble fades, slaughters, tiger tooths, vanillas, dopplers, and fades. But we still have lots of very good options, and I'm going to show you some of my favorites now. First of all, we've got the ultraviolet in minimal wear condition, and then the case hardened and field tested condition. For our next set, we have the Damascus steel in factory new, and then the crimson web in field tested. And then finally we have the bow rail forest in minimal wear, and then the blue steel also in minimal wear. So that is going to be it for the stiletto, and now we're moving on to the Falchion Knife. The Falchion Knife is another super underrated and very overhated knife. This is good news for us because it means there are many nice looking finishes that we can pick up within our budget. The finishes that we're not able to afford are both dopplers, gamma dopplers, fades, and marble fades. But here are some of my favorites that we can pick up. So first of all, we've got the tiger tooth in factory new condition, and then the slaughter also in factory new condition. Next up we have the ultraviolet in minimal wear and the law in factory new. For the case hardened, we've grabbed it in minimal wear condition, and then for the freehand, we've grabbed it in factory new condition. And lastly, we have the bright water in factory new condition, and then the autotronic also in factory new condition. So that is going to be it for the Falchion Knife, and now we're on to our final 4 knives of the video. The flip knife, the skeleton, the Talon, and finally the Bayonet. Let's start with the flip knife. For the flip knife, we cannot afford the following finishes: tiger tooth, slaughter, marble fade, doppler, gamma doppler, and fade. Some affordable and very good looking finishes that you can get with a $300 budget are as follows. So first of all, we have the autotronic and also the law, both in field tested condition. Next up we got the bright water in factory new condition and the ultraviolet in minimal wear. For our next set we have the bow rail forest in minimal wear condition, and then the crimson web in field tested. And for our last pair we have a field tested case hardened and a black laminate in minimal wear. So that's going to be it for the flip knife, and now we're going to the skeleton. For the skeleton knife, here are the finishes that we can't afford: blue steel, case hardened, crimson web, vanilla, fade, and slaughter. While our options are limited, there are still some very nice knives that we can pick up within our budget. Here are a few of my favorites. First up we have the night stripe in field tested condition and the bow rail forest in minimal wear. Then we have the scorched in minimal wear condition and the urban masked in minimal wear condition. And lastly, we have the stained in well-worn condition and the safari mesh in minimal wear condition. So that's going to be it for the skeleton knife, and now we're on to the Talon Knife. The Talon Knife is another high tier knife, which means with a $300 budget we're going to have to eliminate many of the high tier finishes, such as vanilla, blue steel, case hardened, crimson web, fade, slaughter, Damascus steel, doppler, marble fade, and tiger tooth. This once again leaves us with limited options, but still some very nice finishes for you to choose from. Here are some of my favorites. First of all, we have the ultraviolet in field tested condition and the rust coat and battle scarred. Then we have both the scorched and the urban masked, both in minimal wear condition. Then we have the bow rail forest and the forest DD-Pat, again both in minimal wear condition. And lastly, we have the safari mesh in minimal wear and the night stripe in field tested. And that brings an end to the Talon Knife. And now we are on to our final knife of the video, the Bayonet, a very iconic knife and one of the absolute best in the entire game. And once again, there are many finishes that we cannot afford, and they are as follows: Law, case hardened, slaughter, autotronic, tiger tooth, vanilla, doppler, gamma doppler, fade, and marble fade. But as I'm sure you've come to learn with this guide, there are still many options inside of our budget that are incredible looking knives. Here are a few examples. So first up we have the urban masked and the bow rail forest, both in minimal wear condition. Then we have the scorched and minimal wear and the rust coat and battle scarred. Next up we have the bright water and minimal wear condition and the ultraviolet and field tested. Then we have the freehand in field tested condition and the night also in field tested condition. Then we have the blue steel in well worn and the black laminate and field tested. And lastly, we have the Damascus steel and the crimson web, both of them in field tested condition. And that is going to bring this $300 knife buying guide to an end. I really hope this was a helpful guide and I successfully showed you some really nice options for a starter knife. This is a little different to the other videos that I've created in the past, so if you could drop a comment telling me what you thought and if you'd like to see more in the future, that would be amazing. It took a lot of time to make this video for you, so if you could all take a second to leave a like and subscribe, that would be greatly appreciated. And while you're here, make sure you check out some of my other videos, as I'm sure there'll be something in there that you'll enjoy. But until I see you next time, I've been Liquor, and I hope you have an amazing day.